Awake? Okay, great. Make sure people haven't gone to sleep here. We're really excited, everybody's getting wired up here. We're really excited to have this panel focused on modern media strategy, paid, owned, and earned. And for those of us who have been around the media world for a number of years, I don't think there's a more tumultuous time that we've all lived in and worked in. I want to, as we kind of get started here, I want to introduce the panelists. We have, starting on my right here, Dave Rosner, who is the EVP and Director of Innovation for Initiative. Next to him is Dan Rubin, Director of Digital Strategy for Meredith Integrated Marketing. Next to Dan is Paul McClay, who is Director of Strategy and Media for Definition 6. Next to Paul is Julie Shoemaker, who is SVP GM of Media for RockU. And next to Julie is Rachel Pasqua, VP of Mobile for iCrossing. And my name is Al DiGuido. I'm CEO of Zeta Interactive. We're a digital marketing services agency. I think as we get started here, and this is kind of a jump ball, whoever wants to jump in here, let's make sure we have the definitions in terms of media accurate so that we know what we're talking about as we move deeper in. So does anyone take a crack at what the definition of paid media, owned media, and earned media is? Anybody? Okay, Julie.
I'll jump in from a social gaming perspective. We certainly think of paid media as your quantifiable standard display video, kind of CPM-based, engagement-based media. We think of earned as the wonderful halo effect of participation in the content, everything from Facebook sharing to mobile posts to again that halo extension, and then owned is the heavy lifting of a marketer to actually bring content to consumers directly under their brand.
Great. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
The only other thing I would add is a lot of that is filtered through the level of control that the brands have. So in paid media, a lot of our clients are thinking that they have immense control of the message, where in earned, that message is really dictated by the consumer.
It's a little blurry, but I think that's because these definitions were forced on a category to get people to catch up to what the consumer experience was and what our clients, brand managers have to live with. So generally there's those buckets, the own being the relationships that you can communicate freely, like a CRM relationship, and then the earn being the social, but then it blurs a lot because social can become the CRM if you manage it properly. So we see them more as, because we've been doing this before the terms came out, as ways to help people that work with brands to finally catch up and make sure we aren't missing something.
Great, so I think we have a real common foundation in terms of these concepts. I think we really want to jump into kind of the meat of this strategy, media strategy. 5 years ago, 3 years ago, when a client would come to an agency, it was relatively straightforward how to plan a strategy. You understood the market, you understood the buyer, you understood the types of channels that they leaned in on. Today, if you think about what's just happened in the last 12 to 18 months, the rise of social gaming, the rise of the whole social web, the rise of mobile. We were talking about installed bases of tablet PCs, tablet devices being close to 100 million by next year this time. The whole Android and mobile phone phenomena. I'm a marketer, I'm in a highly competitive arena, myself, my competitors, and now the landscape continues to burgeon. How do you deal with that at your agencies? How do you deal with customers who are trying to figure out, as they come to you, how do you plan your media strategy when the landscape keeps evolving and expanding and consumers are touching different products and platforms? How do you go about it? Who wants to take that one?
I'll start. All right, so the first thing we did about 7 years ago was we created a group that I had now called Innovations, which was thinking about more creative ways of redefining what media is and then keeping it ear to the ground what's new. So relationships with venture capitalists, relationships with entrepreneurs. So literally, we're watching the consumer trends and finding the companies. So we're not waiting to read it in the journal. We're meeting with those companies and doing things before anybody else. So before social media agencies were cropping up, or when there were just a few like NMS, we were already doing those deals, and then social media became something extremely important, and it made its place, and that found its way into the agency more formally. So from our standpoint, it's about staying ahead and seeking those things out for our clients so we can keep them ahead of their
But
competition.
I'm thinking about it from the client perspective, right? I'm saying, I'm a client, I've got my budget, I don't know how many of your budgets are expanding by 50 or 100%? Anybody here? Why are you laughing, Paul? Anyway, so the budgets are either the same or being constrained, so they got to work harder. So put your mind in the mind of the buyer. How do you explain that all to a marketer?
We focus obsessively on consumer needs at certain points that are ultimately going to drive conversion. So I don't care if it's a social thing or on an owned property like their URL or in a interactive or a rich media banner. If we can meet a need and understand how to meet that need, then that's really all the client cares about.
Yeah.
Right.
That would be my comment would be very similar to that in that there are a lot of tools in the toolbox now, and there's more every day, and you've got to keep up with them and figure out where they play a role. But ultimately, brands want to efficiently and effectively drive purchase intent. They don't care how they do that; they just want to do it. And a lot of the times, they're talking to us, and they might start the conversation because they've heard of one of the tools in the toolbox. But if you bring it back to that, you can figure out what the right mix is to service the need.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because I think that for the folks that are sitting out there, it's the mix. How do you, right, so you have all these tools in the toolkit. So how do you figure out what the right combination is, and how can you be credible about whatever that combination is? Julie, you have a thought on that?
Well, I think, the one thing that we've really enjoyed in social is some of the agencies that are leveraging it effectively to drive the purchase intent are really thinking about a fundamental element that is very quantifiable. So that paid kind of element as something that fits amongst all this confusion and so many opportunities and so many, tools in the toolbox. It gives that one layer that their client can really sink their teeth into, and then the layers on top of it, which may actually be the higher ROI elements, might not even be on the IL. So I think that some of the path of least resistance I'm seeing from agencies that are working, in our space effectively are just kind of going for that common denominator of digital-based media and not kind of overwhelming their buyers with all these additives.
So, Rachel?
I think that all of these disparate forms of media that are so much higher on everyone's radar than it used to be, like different channels in mobile and social, have actually been beneficial because they've opened up brand marketers' eyes to the fact that the most effective media that you can have might not necessarily be the media that you pay for in the traditional way on a CPC or CPM basis. I'm seeing that happen more and more in the app space. Since I oversee mobile product policy, I spend an inordinate amount of time now talking to clients about how to gain visibility for anything that they're doing in the app space. Last year, everyone wanted to build apps, and everyone built apps, and now they're realizing that they don't know how to monetize their apps. No one's downloading their apps. They don't know how to get them out there. They don't know how to create visibility. And the first instinct is always throw money at it. And it's do display, do SEM. And there's a growing realization that that bought media only works as long as you're spending money. It's as good as the money that you continue to shell out over time. And there's more willingness now, I think, to be open to more organic channels to support your efforts over the long haul. So I think it's harder to make decisions now. There's so much more choice, but I think it's been a good thing because it's made us all less single-minded.
Before we move away, there are real tools that we bring to the table to help optimize across all platforms. So we have a connections panel of 50,000 consumers around the world that keep us informed of what the trends are, and then we have media optimization that is human element but optimizes over 70 touch points. So this is all true, and we all want to get to the right consumer results, but you've got to incorporate the science into it, because if you're going to get efficient, then efficiency implies quantifying, and so you've got to be able to have the tools to simplify the story for your clients and have that real reason to move the money from one budget to the next.
Well, Julie mentioned those three initials that put fear into the hearts of a lot of people. ROI. How big is that now? How important? Like being a gray-haired guy and being in media for a long time, and being in direct media for a lot of years, ROI was very, very front and center. And then there was the brand building type of agencies and those kind of folks. I'm hearing ROI from the lips of a lot more people today. And how much of a pivot point, maybe Dan, maybe you take this, how much of a pivot point today, how important is the ability to be accountable and be measurable and to show that you're actually moving the needle as part of a media strategy?
I think that's kind of like a softball. I don't know how you get into a meeting without talking about ROI. The concept that's come back, which is from even before digital took off, is the whole media mix modeling thing. And I just see such a rise in that. There's such an emphasis from clients as channels are expanding so rapidly to understand where to invest, and they're going back, I think, to media mix. Like, just that traditional, what's the ROI on this channel? I'm going to base it on impressions and see how my Nielsen movements are affected by those investments. And I mean, every other meeting mentions media mix.
What about you, Paul? You know, people, when they come to you and you're the architect of strategy for them, the brand managers or marketing managers, are they very focused these days on, prove it to me, Paul, prove to me that the recommendation you're making is actually going to net out?
Yeah, it's a huge focus area, and forgetting the investment portion, return or revenue is what these guys are trying to generate. And we spoke about it at the beginning, kind of understanding the purchase intent is what you want to drive. Assuming that directly attributable return is the only metric that is indicative of a change in purchase intent can be problematic, because the science of it leads you to put all of your money in places that are very directly attributable to the investment. So hotel chains spend most of their money on paid search because they understand exactly what happens from that click and how to manipulate that, and they can get this sort of volume they need to get because they all look for hotel rooms through search engines. And that's where their dollars go. But that doesn't convey the full brand proposition of a lot of those hotel chains. And while you have marketing mixes that focus on that as one metric,